Greetings everyone, it's Matt Dickinson here with this, the third and final video for Harrow Libraries as part of their Silly Squad Summer Reading Challenge. And it's a great pleasure to be back with you here to have another brief chat about writing, about reading, and about how to create amazing stories, if that's what you'd like to do, which I know many young readers do end up creating whole books. And I'm often astonished when I go to schools, which I go to a lot of schools, to find just how much writing young people are doing in their spare time. And perhaps you're one of those people who's got a secret book that you are creating, or perhaps you are an illustrator and you are building a collection of pictures to turn into a comic or an adventure story, or to develop into a novel at some point in the future. And of course that theme of the illustrations is one that I wanted to touch on in this third and final video for Harrow Libraries. The theme of the visuals, because this is so important, isn't it? The cover of a book is absolutely vital to spike our interest and get us fascinated by what could be inside. And I love the cover of Popcorn Eating Squirrels Go Nuts on Everest. You see so much action. That's one of the squirrels there riding on the back of a Yeti. What a great idea. Now, a lot of people ask me, do I do the illustrations for my books? Well, sadly not. I'd love to be able to do them, but I just don't have that talent. You know, look at the talent involved in creating the characters. That's Rosalba, who's one of the baddies. She's a really evil character who just ends up being just a thorn in the side of the popcorn eating squirrels at every stage. She's such a selfish, horrible, power-crazed woman. And so you've got lots of landscapes in this book. You want to, when you think about illustrations, a range of different options, don't you? You need landscapes. You need to set the scene and find the characters as well. That's two of the characters in the book who help the squirrels in a particular emergency, and that's two of the important human characters in the book. So you need to have characterization with your drawings. You need to establish the location as well, and you also need those funny moments, don't you? And that's a moment where one of the squirrels, Salty the squirrel, he's a bit of a character really. He's very full of himself, a rather pompous and selfish character. He ends up getting plunged into a pool of oil, and that's the picture that the illustrator did there. So how does it work to work with an illustrator? Well, how it works is obviously the illustrator has to read the story. That's very important from the start. And then once the illustrator has read the story, you sit down with them, the author and the illustrator, and sometimes the editor from the publishing house as well, and we come up with a list of what we think the important illustrations will be. And so we'll say, right, you know, in the first chapter we need a picture of one of the squirrels, hungry, waiting for his lunch, and there he is there. And so we just come up with a list of ideas, really. Write down the ideas, and that's the ship that they sail on, and that was another one of the early ideas that we had. So write down a list of ideas, and then the illustrator goes away and does some preliminary sketches. So that's just a few little first scribbles, really. Then we look at those first scribbles and we make comments, and we say, well, we like that, or we're not so keen on that. And then he goes away and finishes them off and puts the colour in, and that's how it works. And then when it comes to building the book itself, how does that work? Because that's something, again, at schools I often get asked. Does the author do that? Do you have to do that as the writer of a book to create the whole thing? Well, the answer is no. What you have for that is a publisher. And the publisher of the book is the company which brings the book out and puts it in the bookshops. And the publisher is going to do all those important jobs. For example, the typesetting. They're going to choose how many words there should be on each page. How many lines should there be on each page? And that depends on the reading age, doesn't it? So for example, with my book, which is more for older readers, you know, year 6 and up, so a lot of teenagers read this book, it's got a lot more lines on the page, a lot more words on the page, because readers are more developed at that age and they can cope with more information. And so that's an important decision, and that's the type of decision that the publishers make. the publishers decide, things like that. And then they lay it all out, put it into a professional layout, and then they send the document away to the printers, and the printers are the place that actually create the final book. And that's how it works. Then the book gets shipped off to bookshops, it gets shipped off to online sales places like Amazon. And of course, there's the other option these days, two other options really, which are equally interesting from the point of view of the writer and of course the publisher as well. The first is ebooks, so Kindle and e-readers like that, which you may read on. A lot of young readers are beginning to get into that. It's been a little bit slow getting out there, but I've got a Kindle, and if I go traveling, then I think it's an absolutely brilliant way of taking lots of books with you rather than having to lug kilograms and kilograms of books with you. It's good to have an e-reader, so you could explore that as a possibility. Or audiobooks. Audiobooks are also increasingly popular, and the good news is that the popcorn eating squirrels are being turned into audiobooks, and an actor is actually reading out the books, and that's going to be coming out very soon indeed, so that's great. So I hope that you've got plans for your reading. I hope that you've got some plans perhaps for your writing as well. And I wanted to give one final piece of advice about that. If you are creating stories of your own, if you love sitting down with a blank piece of paper and a pencil and working on a story idea, then I had another tip that might be useful for you, I hope. And that is a very simple tip, but it's actually quite effective, and surprising how many professional writers do it. And that is to actually write on a piece of paper beginning, middle and end. And what could be simpler than that? And what could be more true than the fact that every single story that you've ever read, every film you've ever seen, even probably every poem you've ever encountered has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end. So what do those three steps need to contain? Let's have a little think about that. So in the beginning of a story, you need to establish your characters, don't you? You need to meet them and find out a bit about their normal, everyday life. For example, with Harry Potter, we discover about his life with the Dursleys, don't we? And just how dreadful it actually is. But that's his normal world, surprisingly. But we find out about his normal life. So you need to establish a character or a bunch of characters, in my case, the popcorn eating squirrels. We discover them at the beginning of the story. They're just living in this park and they're having a nice time. They're enjoying each other's company. They get along fine. Everything's really nice. They've got plenty of food, that's them. And so these three characters, Ben, Cassie and Alfie, they are established in a very nice situation. They've got lots of food, they're living in a park, and everything is absolutely hunky-dory. So that's the beginning of the story. Now, in the middle of the story, you want to try and find some conflict. Now, you may ask the question, well, why do you need conflict in a story? Well, you do need conflict in a story. Just like, imagine, Harry Potter. What would Harry Potter be like without the battles with Voldemort, without the conflict that's threatening him at every stage, and the conflict that comes with the relationships, the sometimes difficult relationships he has with his fellow pupils at Hogwarts? That conflict is really where the interest comes from. And so that's a great moment in the middle of a story to look for conflict and to look for ways to make things more difficult for your main character. And then at the end of a story, your character has to achieve something, don't they? They have to move on. Obviously you've got different types of endings. You can have a cliffhanger ending where you end it and no one's really quite sure what has actually happened. It hasn't really been resolved, and those can be surprisingly effective. You could have a positive outcome for your hero, or you could even have a negative outcome for your hero, which also, of course, works very, very well, and many stories have that. So that would be my recommendation. If you are thinking of writing a book, if you'd like to write something like the popcorn eating squirrels, if you've got a friend perhaps who's an illustrator that you could work with, that would be even better, because you can inspire each other as you go along. Then my advice would be to sit down with a piece of paper and think beginning, middle and end, and then think about your characters. What's the problem that your characters might have, and how are they going to solve that problem? and then in the middle you're looking for a conflict to build up. Perhaps you've got an antagonist in there as well, a baddie who's going to be working flat out to try and stop your hero from achieving their dreams. And then you've got the resolution at the end. So the first stage is the setup, the middle is the conflict, and then at the end you've got a resolution, which is the end of the story. Simple. How easy is that? So there we are. The Popcorn Eating Squirrels, the Everest Files. It's been a great pleasure to meet you all as part of the Harrow Libraries Summer Reading Challenge. I've really enjoyed doing these little videos for you. I hope they've been useful for you as readers and useful for you as writers and illustrators as well. So signing off for the final time and saying goodbye for now. Hope to see you at one of your schools in Harrow very soon, or at a library event where we can do something live. All the best for now. Bye.